Hey everybody, welcome to the TraceSafe office hours. I'm Wayne Lloyd, CEO of TraceSafe. We are going to have a great discussion today. We have Marcin Samiak with us, who is our Chief Privacy Officer and VP of Technology. And Marcin is going to run through a lot of our thoughts around privacy by design, how we think about privacy as it relates to wearables, GDPR, and the kickoff of ISO 27001. So he'll be able to give a lot of context into that. The first thing we're going to do is go through our recent news, and I can talk through some of those news announcements for everybody. So we talked about our investment in Airbeam, announced a $25 million raise to pursue a public listing. Subsequently, there was an announcement that Airbeam had canceled that deal with the company they were going to do an amalgamation agreement with. I think that and the announcement was cancel the deal and we'll use an alternative go public transaction, and that's what's going on. Their go public process seems like it was probably maybe delayed by a week or two, but they're definitely on track to get that listed. And I expect another announcement around financing and other things to be happening very shortly. So that is firmly on track, and everything's going very well in on the Airbeam front. So very happy about that. TraceSafe launches wearable based time and attendance pilot program. So this is exciting. I'm not sure if we touched on this in the last office hours when this actually happened, but I know I've done a couple interviews about this, but really exciting use cases for wearables in a medical setting where you have people coming in from different areas, and we have the ability to track the time and attendance. And a lot of these situations, you have different people doing kind of, in some instances, pay based on activities. So you have, if you're involved, if you're in one area of the facility and you're engaged in a certain activity, they can keep track of that. So they'll know when you were doing different activities. So it's a really great proof of concept for us to be making sure that our technology is flexible, that we're able to do more than and expand beyond the contact tracing landscape, which we feel like contact tracing obviously is becoming more of a feature set of a larger product every day. And so this, in addition to our patient path and a ton of other initiatives that we're doing, is going to be really well received by the market and our customers. So the last announcement that I want to kind of give some color on is multi-year technology agreement with tier 1 transportation firm. So this is an interesting one because I think the focus should really be around the fact that this is a technology agreement and a technology partnership. This is, in the entire transportation industry, they're trying to figure out how they enhance the guest experiences, what role wearables will play. And in certain industries, the CDC is mandating that there be contact tracing aboard the vessels. And obviously the operators, as the COVID sort of fades, they don't want to have products that feel like a hindrance to the guest experience. So how we're positioning ourselves is working alongside these companies hand in hand to make sure that we're developing products that enhance the guest experience, deeply integrate with existing systems, and really elevate what's going on these vessels and all across the transportation sector. So we're super excited about this. We're deploying these things. This is a long-term project, and I think really sets TraceSafe up for to be at the front of the line when it comes to sort of discovering all of these different guest experiences and technology applications that are going to be coming. This is a new era of wearable tech, whether that's in the enterprise world around the connected worker strategy, which we're seeing huge growth in, or if it's in the hospitality sector with connected guest experiences. We're excited to be a part of that and be working with these guys. So I'm just going to add Marcin to the stream. Hey, Marcin, welcome. So Marcin is our Chief Privacy Officer and VP of Technology. And I can I'm just going to read the slides here. Previously founded Privacy Sense, Canadian website focused on educating individuals and businesses on privacy and privacy laws. Previously he was with a team of privacy professionals at Checkwell Decision Corporation. Thanks Marcin for jumping on and talking through this. I know a lot of people have probably maybe are aware or not that you recently wrote a white paper about everything that we're doing at TraceSafe. It's really, really interesting. I wanted to kind of roll back a little bit and talk about sort of at the beginning of the process. When you first came on, I think you were our first or second executive hire, and that kind of just speaks to how seriously we took the privacy consideration and sort of how early we wanted to inject that into the product and everything else. So maybe walk us through a little bit about the journey from starting off with TraceSafe and how we were thinking about privacy in those early days. The context around the wearables and how that maybe contrasts with a mobile phone and the app-based contact tracing versus the wearable-based contact tracing, and just sort of maybe walk us through a little bit of that journey from the beginning to sort of this white paper, which I think it summarizes a lot of your learnings and the point and the things that we've come up with over the last 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, I would love to. And thanks so much for having me on the show, Wayne. As Wayne said, my name is Marcin Samiak, Chief Privacy Officer and VP of Technology here at TraceSafe. And when I joined the organization back in July, I would say that the privacy landscape was quite different from what it is today. At that time, the COVID pandemic was still relatively new, and there were a lot of these emerging players in the market who all had some sort of a solution to sell. And what we realized really early in the game is that a lot of these app-based solution providers just didn't do a great job of fixing the contact tracing problem. So there were security issues with a lot of these apps. There were inefficiencies, and then overall, I would say that there was a usability problem with a lot of these apps. And we still see that same problem with like the Canadian federal app as well. There just aren't too many people that are using these apps or were using these apps sort of back then when they were all released. And so earlier on, we realized that we had a strong advantage with our wearables-based approach to doing contact tracing. And there were other benefits of using our technology as well, in that we don't store any personal information on the wearables themselves. And so we were able to sort of carve out a good portion of the market in selling to customers who realized that the app-based approach was not effective, and we have a very simple, streamlined hardware approach, fully secure, fully scalable, can integrate with different systems that organizations have, and was and is a very good effective solution for contact tracing, in addition to what we do with quarantine management, et cetera. And I'd also say that around that time, people were very sort of skeptical about whether or not technology could play a role in helping stem the tide of COVID-19. And we know for sure now that technology really is an effective tool for doing so. And those tools that have been built with this concept called privacy by design in mind really have the upper approach when it comes to doing things like contact tracing and quarantine management in a way that respects user privacy. And so what this white paper talks about is that, often in the media, we see this false dichotomy of it's either all civil liberties or it's all privacy. And what this white paper argues is that it doesn't have to be an either or sort of thing. So you can have privacy and you still can have civil liberties if you design your technology solutions in a way that's consistent with this privacy by design approach. So then the white paper goes into a bit more detail as to how we've built our solutions with privacy by design in mind. And another thing I just wanted to mention was that when I first joined the organization, one of the most important things I wanted to do was to implement a really comprehensive privacy program. And so what we did was we worked with a leading third-party privacy consultant, and we've implemented a comprehensive privacy program that's built upon the GDPR. So we really look at the GDPR as being the gold standard. It's the strictest, most comprehensive privacy legislation around the world. And if we can build everything based on that, we know we've got a leading solution from a privacy point of view.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think maybe we just want to touch on the idea, it's just interesting because we would hear sort of competing claims about, everything, like the phone is just going to swallow up everything, as far as, everything will just be another app on your phone and there's no real place for wearables. But I think, from a commercial standpoint, that hasn't shown to be true. In fact, I think that one of the major tailwinds we have with TraceSafe is that the big tech companies have actually been a little bit slow to adopt some of these, stricter privacy settings, and that kind of that slowness. I mean, I think Apple's done probably a better job, but definitely Google and Android have been slower, and that erosion of trust of just not really understanding what your phone is talking back to, some other device or some other service. There are granular privacy controls, but people don't really want to, that's not something that people want to spend a lot of their brain power just constantly thinking about, like what is my phone sharing? It's an easier decision just to say, hey, when it comes to these sort of more sensitive functions, I would rather have it built into a wearable where, if I don't have the wearable on me, I know that there's no kind of private information being moving around, and so I don't really have to think about it. Whereas my phone is on me all the time. It's something I take with me, from a work setting to, when I'm at home and when I'm out and about. So, I think the commercial world has proven us out that wearables are going to play an important role because of this idea that they sort of hive off private information. And really, like, employers and employees, it doesn't seem like, particularly in a workplace, people want to have another app on their phone that maybe their workplace can look into. Do you maybe want to just talk about that, about conversations with clients and sort of that sort of thing?
Yeah. No, I think you hit on some good points there. I'd say that generally there's been a growing distrust in technology companies. Mostly the Silicon Valley sort of based ones, the Facebooks, the Googles. There's been lots of stuff in the media in the past 1 year that sort of speaks to this and the growing distrust. For example, you've got TikTok and sort of the privacy allegations there. And then you see a company like Apple who does a complete 180 and ends up doing certain things to bolster user privacy. So now we sort of see different the other big companies sort of facing off against Apple. And what we also saw with some of those earlier contact tracing apps was that a lot of them were built really quickly and haphazardly, and a lot of them had either security or privacy concerns globally. So there was this really early distrust in using consumer apps for contact tracing. And so to go back to what you just mentioned there, that really has been a selling feature of ours, is that you just have a wearable now that has been built with privacy by design in mind, where it only has one function. It's doing contact tracing. And you know that when you put it on, it's doing contact tracing, and when you take it off, it's no longer doing contact tracing. And we've got other privacy by design sort of features built into the whole ecosystem, like one we call localized contact tracing, where even if you were to take your wearable home after work, it's not going to do anything. It doesn't have any GPS built in, so there is no covert tracking happening there. And because there's no gateways installed, obviously within your home, there's no data to sort of push over to those gateways and then push into the cloud. And then all of our wearables are encrypted on the device, encrypted when they're speaking to each other, and encrypted when they go to the gateway into the cloud. And then on top of that, we don't store any personally identifiable information on the wearables themselves. So the way it sort of looks from a tech perspective is that if you're wearing one of our wearables, let's call it wearable A, it will be speaking with another wearable called wearable B. So we don't have to put any personal information on that device. We don't have to have names or specific IDs. It's all what we call pseudonymized information on the wearables.
Yeah, maybe that's a good transition to get into some of the GDPR stuff, and you can kind of walk us through the regulatory framework and sort of how we have thought about building our products and all that.
Yeah, you bet. So GDPR, was implemented in the past couple of years in Europe. Everyone knows it to be the strictest privacy law globally. It's very comprehensive. It's very complex. And I'd say compared to a lot of the other privacy legislations we see around the world, the GDPR really does have teeth. I mean, it's got a bark and a bite. Whereas when you look at like Canadian privacy legislation, for example, it's pretty weak. It's pretty soft. Often the federal and the provincial privacy commissioners don't have a lot of power. And then you've got a bit of a patchwork situation in the US. So the GDPR really is the first privacy legislation to come by that basically says we take privacy very, very seriously. And part of that is because privacy is a human right in Europe, and that sort of stems from some of the atrocities that happened in the Second World War. So Europe takes privacy very, very seriously, and so that's one of the reasons why we chose to adopt the GDPR framework, because we know that if we can be compliant with the GDPR, and we are, then we easily comply and far surpass the requirements required by other privacy legislations, whether it's Canadian, American, or various different ones based in Asia. And so there's different components of GDPR. It's a principles-based framework. I talked earlier about privacy by design, and privacy design is actually baked into the GDPR as well. There's strict fines for companies that don't comply with the GDPR. And so everyone takes it quite seriously. And the data protection authorities that are in Europe really take it seriously as well. And they sort of have that bark and that bite to be able to fine organizations quite a bit of money if they don't comply. So in conversations we have with clients that are based in Europe, they understand the importance of privacy and are asking these tough questions of us. And thankfully, because we have this program in place, we're able to comply and to work with them to implement our solutions.
Yeah, and just to sort of, a lot of this stuff, seems like, it's very routine. Of course, we'd want to be, complying with privacy legislation and so on. GDPR is tough, right? It's not an easy guideline to follow. For the most part, when you have a product that's already built, a lot of the major tech companies, they create a GDPR compliant product. For us creating new products, obviously we have to go deep into the stack, understand exactly how information is being stored, how that information is moving through the system, and it does take quite a bit of work. The upside of that from a commercial perspective is that some of our biggest customers recently have come through Europe, and this is a requirement. So being on top of these kind of privacy concerns puts us in a front-running position for a lot of the business that's emanating there. Even if they just have operations in Europe, it really lets us, I would say, bypass a lot of our competitors by having these big checkboxes, in place. And I think that goes, we should talk about some of the privacy first principles, and then the ISO 27001 to kind of wrap up the conversation as far as how this kind of conversation extends from the customer geographic locations into the ISO 27001 is really about the scale of organization that we're going to be dealing with. So maybe we could jump into this. Martin, you can walk us through this slide here.
Yeah, you bet. So earlier on, we decided that we wanted to have a privacy first approach to doing business. And really what that means is embedding privacy into our decision making when it comes to product development, when it comes to how we interact with clients. And like you mentioned, not being on the sort of lagging end when it comes to privacy, but really trying to be a leader in this field. Naturally, when people think about contact tracing, quarantine management, even things like human activity recognition, different areas that we're exploring in data and AI, people are always thinking about privacy, whether it's at the top of their mind or at the back of their mind. So we made that decision early on to have a privacy first approach and be really, really deliberate about the conversations we have on privacy and security. And so one way that's done is that whenever we take on a new initiative that might have an effect on someone's personal privacy, we do something called a data protection impact assessment. And then the privacy by design thing that I keep talking about really is the heart of a lot of that, in that if you have a privacy by design approach, it means that you're being proactive. And so you're not building some sort of a tech solution and then you're going, oh shoot, how do I figure out how to minimize the privacy issues in this application? It's starting with that privacy conversation first and trying to deliver a solution that benefits both parties, the person who is using that technology and the end user, or I say the person that's managing that technology. So it's not a zero-based sum approach. It's everyone wins and benefits when you've got a privacy by design sort of implementation in your approach. So there's tons of different ways we've done that over the past couple months. One of them is that apps are not mandatory. So again, we realized early on that people don't want to use apps. People are skeptical of using apps on their phone. So as an alternative, we have something that's a bit more privacy focused, and we have something called the gateway solution, where as long as you have gateways installed within your office or your warehouse and you have our wearables, those are able to speak to each other without the use of a end user mobile phone. And then there's a whole bunch of other things we do, like we purposefully only collect the minimum amount of data required. So unlike the apps that people are used to using on their phone, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or really any type of app, those apps really just like hoover up data and then they try to decide what to do with it and how they can monetize it. We've taken we're on the opposite end of the spectrum, where in our privacy policy, we state exactly which information we're collecting, and it really is the bare minimum to do the job. So with quarantine management, for example, we've got like 4 or 5 small bits of information required to do quarantine management, and that's it. So we don't collect any other information that we don't have consent for to use. And I think that really separates us again from some of these app-based approaches.
Yeah, and I think there's another commercial consideration here, which is that the privacy first approach, we're sort of using those as building blocks. meaning we're building up trust with our users, incrementally. So the companies that are using our products, the um, the on the enterprise side, on the hospitality side, on the venue side, and even in government, you build that incremental and that foundation of trust with those users, and then that is what really is going to allow us to be able to push the boundaries as far as functionality is concerned. There's some functionality and interesting use cases that you can do with these products. Really, the wearables idea has been around for some time, but now we're seeing major catalysts for that being pushed mainstream, and we don't want to see that kind of stunted because people are concerned about misuses of data, a lot of the things that have been kind of associated with with some of these like data breaches or what's happened with the erosion of trust in the big tech players. So really building that foundation of trust is important because it allows you to build new features and functionality that might be without that foundation of trust, might not be able to be made at all. And so that's really one of our focuses is to build that relationship and build that trust layer so that we can push the technology boundaries into areas that we think are going to be super effective, very commercially appealing. But you can't. You have to build that track record. So that's why from a commercial perspective, this is all super important.
That's right. Yeah.
Just look at Apple and the kind of brand equity they're building with their users by taking a privacy first approach. I think it's very clear that with Apple they say you are not the product. The Apple products are the product because they don't advertise to you, and that builds a lot of trust with users.
Yeah, exactly. Apple's doing some fantastic things in that area right now, so kudos to them. And that probably segues us quite nicely into a conversation about security.
Yep. Perfect.
So on the security side, I mean, we have strong security controls in place, and we've been very deliberate on the privacy side to implement a really comprehensive privacy program. What we're doing now is we've made a decision to start implementing ISO 27001. So ISO 27001 is a internationally recognized standard for creating something called a ISMS, or an information security management system. And really it's there to ensure that you've got the right controls, the right policies, the right procedures for a strong cybersecurity framework. And so this is really important from a client perspective in instilling confidence that everything that we've designed and implemented is secure. We know we have these strong security controls in place, and by having something like ISO 27001, you're able to eventually go through a certification process with an auditor and have them confirm that, yes, you have all of the right security controls in place based on the risks of your organization. And that there is absolutely huge for our clients, because instead of asking 100 different questions, sending over questionnaires, that we currently do a great job with, and we currently sort of pass with flying colors, you're able to give a certification from an independent third-party auditor that's able to sort of certify all these different various areas of security. So we've recognized that that is a very important thing for us to do, something that's really worthwhile, and something that we know our clients are really going to appreciate from a security perspective.
Yeah, and just to put a finer point on that, when TraceSafe goes out and solicits new business from an enterprise customer, what they want to know is that if we push data onto your system, is it going to be safe? And so, at the current time frame, there are security audits, questionnaires. There's lots of different ways that those companies basically put the burden on us, and they say, hey, tell us about how and where and what is going to happen with our data on your side, and to make sure that they're guarding against data breaches, all sorts of stuff. So right now that's a big laborious process, and as Martin mentioned, we pass those with flying colors because we have these systems in place. The ISO 27001 is a way of really formalizing and certifying that all those have been in place, and it's a third-party body that does it. And at that point, instead of having to do all those questionnaires, you effectively can just sort of point to your ISO certification, and that kind of becomes the beginning and end of the conversation. As well, it sort of qualifies you for additional, a broader array of enterprise customers that may have this ISO requirement before engaging with a vendor to begin with. So two things: it speeds up the procurement process when we're soliciting new enterprise customers, and it opens up an entire world of new customers for us that we can sell into.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Wayne. So we have these procedures in place. Like you and I mentioned, we respond to these questionnaires. They're very long, they're lengthy, they're time consuming. Having this certification is essentially a very strong stamp that says you've been certified and we're able to trust you with our customer data. So it goes a really long way.
Yeah. That's great. I think that's the end of our sort of presentation side. So I can get into some Q&A. Company mentioned about providing guidance, given the company's about 1 month. Yeah, we will. So I could say, we've listened. The company's listened to our shareholders around the guidance issue, and I think that in addition to starting this guidance process, we're also going to be making some additional changes related to sort of operationalizing some of our finance functions and how we communicate with the market. So stay tuned for that. That's definitely been kind of going on in the background, and I think we will be releasing some Q4 numbers very shortly. I can't really make any share price predictions for the end of 2021, but I can say that the business is very strong. I feel like the team is executing very well, and we've been updating with our customer list, and our customer wins fairly regularly. And I think if you look back at our track record at this point, we'd be deployed to the Singapore in Singapore under the Ministry of Health there, deploying many thousands of devices and going through the scrutiny of a government level kind of onboarding process, as well as gaining the accolades from that customer win with our competitors, which basically has a lot of different countries look to Singapore as the gold star, and if Singapore does vet a product, it sort of means that it can be used elsewhere in the region without much additional due diligence around whether or not it's appropriate or whether or not it works. And so we've seen a little bit of an update around operations in Malaysia, and that's been super exciting to see the business start to develop in other areas of that region. In addition, we shipped 60,000 units to tier 1 semiconductor company. That was a deployment that went to 20 different countries, approximately 20 different countries. So deploying physically in the manufacturing facilities, and in addition, getting a wearable to every single worker, and that's 40,000 full-time workers, or permanent employees, I should say, and about 20,000 contractors. So, effectively, you have a massive global deployment of our wearable product, which I don't see I don't see anyone else kind of executing at that level. We did a recent announcement around the transportation industry and winning these technology partnerships, which are, we feel, long-lasting partnerships, multi-year agreements that are really set the stage. And the conversation there is not about contact tracing necessarily. The conversation there is about wearables, sensors, and integrating with all the things around them. This is really like just in the same way that there's a future of work story with the enterprises, there's a future of which we're living in now around the guest experience and what that means. So we're really like leading that charge and working with some of the great companies in that space. So that's super exciting. So those are just some of the announcements. So those in and of themselves are, in my opinion, just incredible accomplishments for any company to make. And the company continues to execute really well on deals like that now and into the future. So on the uplisting, we do have DTC eligibility. And that's our first step into getting uplisted on the OTC markets, and so that's been moving along. So really happy for that process to be advancing, and it is advancing and is happening in the background. So there's a question about AirBeam. The update with AirBeam was not liked by the market. Are we better with it? I feel that the new path forward is significantly better for AirBeam. I think there'll be less dilution and a cleaner process to go public, and I think it's very bullish for AirBeam. And I think there's going to be, as we hear updates about it, I think we'll know more. And but from everything I hear, it's very positive on that side, and it continues to keep momentum and is a very good path. Yeah, I think the AirBeam announcement. So the question is similarly related to AirBeam. Any update on the AirBeam? Now they've moved on from RTO. They are exploring an alternative go public process. So I don't think I can say anything more than that, but it's active and gaining momentum, and I think it'll be very well received when the news comes out. Confidentiality on the tier 1 customer have to do with them wanting a competitive advantage as well. Yeah, I think there's a number of considerations when it comes to these very large, well-known companies, rolling out new products and new services. Obviously it would be great if we could announce, every detail about every customer. But the reality is that, while we have an obligation to, have timely information to our shareholders, we work really closely with these partners, and they have considerations that are active as well, mostly around how they want to communicate new features to their guests and when they want to be communicating those new features to their guests. We leave that to them, and we are extremely respectful of what they have as their own goals and initiatives. So when companies ask us to not name the partnership, we just try to be respectful and be a good partner to them and make sure that we're working together on those things. So that, I think, kind of wraps up the questions. So thanks, Martin, for joining and giving us some insight into the privacy landscape, how we think about that, and a little bit of insight into the security landscape. Super helpful, and hopefully people can see that we're taking a very mature approach to this that is building a foundation of trust, so that we can, it's really about extending the commercial function of what we're doing and making sure that we have a very clear pathway forward to innovate, and that that foundation is going to be key for us moving forward there. So thanks to you, and thanks to everybody for tuning in. Really appreciate it, and have a great day.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.